everybody, my name is Arden. Today I'm going to be giving you a very brief introduction to the sport of combined driving. Like eventing, combined driving has three phases: dressage, marathon, and cones. These phases test the driver's ability and the horse's obedience, speed, and athleticism. Competitors can drive a single horse, a pair of horses, or a team of 4 horses. This is a video of my trainer getting a pair of horses ready for the water hazards that they may see during marathon. Dressage judges horses on harmony, impulsion, ease of movement, and suppleness. This video shows a typical outfit, with a hat, apron, and brown gloves. Here I am the driver's groom. I add weight to the back and help the driver to look more professional. Next is her carriage. You can see that it is more traditional with wood accents and lamps added. The marathon either comes before or after cones. It's judged based on the driver's accuracy around a series of obstacles called hazards. These hazards are seen on a course like that of cross country. During the marathon, the horses must stay within a set time limit and minimum. Penalties are given if the correct time is not achieved, if the horse misses a hazard, or if they go through the course incorrectly. At the end of the marathon, drivers go to vet check to record their horse's pulse, temperature, and overall well-being. In these photos, you can see another person on the back of the carriage. This is a navigator. They help the driver take the safest and fastest route through the hazards. They also shift their weight to help the carriage go around uneven terrain and prevent rollovers. The next picture that we see is a marathon carriage. It is smaller and lower to the ground, which makes it more maneuverable. The horse is outfitted with 4 brushing boots, which prevent injury and concussion when coming into contact with the hazards on course. The driver and navigator are both wearing safety vests if they should be thrown from the carriage, helmets, and more casual attire overall to keep them safe. The cones phase judges the driver and horse's accuracy. Cones are set up next to one another like a gate. Each cone has a tennis ball on top to make this phase even more difficult. Penalties are given when cones or tennis balls are knocked down and when the time limit or minimum is exceeded or not met. The groom has the same purpose during the cones phase as it does in dressage. Because combined driving doesn't require physical riding of the horse, this sport attracts a lot of different abilities of riders. We see people that are older, people that may not be as able-bodied as other riders. And so this sport is really inclusive, and that's why I enjoy it so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Caroline and I'm an Industry and Management Senior, and today I'm going to talk to you about ground driving. I learned to ground drive with my horse Ray a few years ago, and it's a really great tool whether you plan on teaching your horse to drive in the future or you just want to incorporate more groundwork in your training plan.
Ground driving, which is sometimes referred to as long lining, is kind of the first phase of teaching a horse how to drive. So in this section, we'll look at the equipment used in ground driving, as well as some of the benefits of this type of training. We begin tacking up with a saddle pad. Some people choose to take a thin saddle pad and fold it in half lengthwise so that it better fits the shape of the surcingle. Others choose not to use a pad at all, especially if you're using a well-cushioned surcingle. Today we are using a smaller pad that's thick enough to not twist around once we start working. That's just kind of my preference, but everyone's is a little different in how they like to do this. Next, we'll position the surcingle just behind the withers on the horse with the billets hanging just as they would if it was a saddle. We'll also run the surcingle through the loops of the saddle pad, which will just kind of help keep the pad in place once we start working. The girth attaches just like a normal English girth would. It doesn't need to be quite as snug as a girth would be if you were tacking up to ride, since we're not adding the weight of a saddle and a rider, which might cause it to get twisted one way or the other. The girth on your surcingle only needs to be tightened enough to keep the surcingle in place while we're working. The bridle we're using today is just a normal English bridle. This one has a flash and a full cheek snaffle bit, since this is what the horse usually goes in. To keep the reins from hanging and getting in the way while we work, they're twisted up into the throat latch. So to do this, you just take the 2 reins which are looped over the horse's neck as if you were riding, and twist them around each other until it's snug and up close to the horse's neck. Then you just run your throat latch between the two reins and connect it like normal. This is a good way to keep the reins close to the horse's neck and out of the way for long lining. Another option you have is to completely remove the reins from the bridle while long lining. This technique might be especially useful if you have a young horse or a really sensitive horse, or someone who's just new to ground driving, and you want to avoid any extra distractions like the feeling of the reins against the bottom of their neck. Once in the arena or wherever space you're going to be working, you just run the end of the line through one of the rings on the surcingle and connect it to the bit on each side. One of the other considerations for ground driving is safety. The handler should always be wearing a helmet and gloves in case the horse were to spook and pull the lines through your hands. You're not going to get rope burn. I also like to carry a lunge whip or a long dressage whip when I'm working. This helps me if I need to give the horse a little bit more of a driving aid, and worst case scenario, if you need to get a misbehaving horse to stay out of your space, just like if you were lunging, you should carry a whip with you for that purpose. I also choose to keep my lines bunched up, one in each hand, instead of letting them drag along behind me. I'm just more comfortable this way so that I know I'm not going to trip over the lines, and if I'm doing work that involves a lot of turns, the horse isn't going to get tangled up in the lines either. If you are planning to start driving your horse, ground driving is kind of the first step in that process because it gets the horse used to you being behind him rather than up by his head or on his back if he's already been mounted before. It's also a good opportunity to refine your horse's response to vocal cues, since you're really relying heavily on vocal cues like whoa, or stand, or walk on, or trot, because you don't have your weight aids or your leg aids. Once you and your horse have mastered the basics of ground driving, steering, and your horse is responding properly to all your cues, you can really start to have fun with some of the exercises you create for him. I like to add things like ground poles for the horse to walk or trot over, or I'll set up a box made out of 4 ground poles and ask the horse to stop in the box, either from the walk or the trot. You can set up obstacles for the horse to weave around, or you can make different shapes in the ring like circles and serpentines and such. Even if you never plan on driving your horse, ground driving is still a really fun tool to use in your training program. There are a lot of ways you can use ground driving to really challenge your horse and your own abilities.